Pope Francis has apologized for the harms done to Indigenous people forced to attend Canada's residential schools.
E mi unisco ai fratelli vescovi canadesi.
I ask for God's forgiveness, and I want to say to you with all my heart, I am very sorry, and I join my brothers, the Canadian bishops, in asking your pardon.
This today was a day I will never forget the rest of my life. It started on Monday when we came home to come to visit our Holy Father, and today was, my heart is so full I can hardly speak.
Former Assembly of First Nations National Chief Phil Fontaine first sought a papal apology back in 2009. Today, he was in the room when Pope Francis made his historic remarks. Phil Fontaine, this was obviously a historic moment, but I can't help but think about the fact that it was a very personal moment for you too, with your own experience in residential schools, listening to the Pope apologize. What did it feel like hearing those words today?
I was honored, actually. I felt honored that the Holy Father spoke to us the way he did. And I think each person that was in the room listening to the Holy Father speak probably felt as I did. He was speaking to me personally and directly, though I know that he was actually speaking to the world when he expressed those words.
Do you feel like it helped you in a way to be there today?
Well, I've been very involved for some time, and I believe that my presence there was really important to me personally. Mm-hmm. Of course, it was. It was a special moment for me.
I want to ask you about specifically what the Pope apologized for. He apologized for the conduct of some members of the Catholic Church. The words didn't go so far as to apologize for the role of the Catholic Church. Did he go far enough today?
You have to keep in mind that the Pope Francis, is the head of the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. 1.2 million Catholics. I mean, 1.2 billion Catholics worldwide. Mm-hmm. You're speaking for the Catholic Church, the whole of the Catholic Church. And so the words he spoke were delivered on behalf of the Catholic Church. It wasn't on his own behalf. Mm-hmm. Those words reflected the interests of the worldwide church. So those words were really, I think, a powerful expression of the church's position on this issue. Is this the end? Of course not. No, this is one important step in this long journey to bring about true healing and reconciliation for the survivors and our communities.
Do I understand you to be saying then that there's no distinction to be made, that if the Pope says that he feels guilt and shame for the actions of some members of the church, that for you that is the same as apologizing for the role of the church?
Well, I would make the point again. Mm-hmm. The Pope is the head of the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. He isn't the head of one small church or one small diocese somewhere in Canada or the United States. Mm-hmm. In effect, he's the boss. He's the sovereign head of the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. And so he wouldn't dare speak on his own behalf. I mean, this statement that he delivered today is the result of work done by the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops. They clearly had input into his statement, and he has other people that worked for him in the, I don't know if this is the correct pronunciation, the Curia, And so this was clearly a reflection of the teamwork that exists in the church, at least to the extent that I know. Mm-hmm. So I'm not quibbling about the words this day. I'm not questioning the sincerity of the Holy Father, and I'm not questioning whether he's speaking just for himself or for the as I said, the worldwide church. That would be self-defeating. Why would I want to engage in that kind of doubt? I mean, this is a very historic day, a special moment for survivors, for our families, and our communities. And as far as I'm concerned, this is a moment to celebrate.
Let's talk about this. I mean, so many people have talked about this as a turning point. And I wonder how, going forward, you will judge if this is truly that turning point. What is it that you want to see going forward to show that the intention expressed today really results in meaningful change?
Well, for one thing, so many survivors have said that they want to begin their journey to true healing. Mm-hmm. But the one missing piece in the journey is to hear the Pope speak as he did today and deliver an apology to the survivors, to say, I am sorry. He said, I am very sorry. So to me, that will make it, to my understanding about this issue and the conflict that so many survivors have had, is that it will enable them to actually begin taking the steps necessary to begin their healing process and bring about reconciliation in their lives, in their families, their communities, and indeed with the Catholic Church. That relationship has been deeply fractured for some time now. And I believe that this will make it possible for both interests to begin some serious work in repairing the relationship. And then it will also make it possible for us to begin work on other important issues. This is not the end of this process. In my view, this is the beginning of another chapter in this long journey we've been on for some time.
What does that look like?
I'm not sure what it looks like, but I can see both the church and our representatives sitting down and preparing, or not preparing, but developing a framework of engagement between the Catholic Church and our people, and begin mapping out a strategy to deal with the many outstanding issues that hopefully at the end of that process will fix the many things that are wrong in the relationship between the church and ourselves. And people have talked about access to school records, church records. They've talked about reparations. They've talked about land-related issues. They've talked about maybe even a museum to house the many thousands of pieces of art and artifacts and objects that are in the Vatican Museum that now people say we want those repatriated. So we have to figure out a way to do that, but that has to be done together. I mean, there isn't any party that will be able to unilaterally decide on next steps. Those days are gone. This process that we've been engaged in has been a very public and transparent process. And as a result of the Kamloops situation that shocked Canadians, the eyes of the world began to focus on Canada. And people were shocked to learn that Canada's relationship and how it has treated the Indigenous population has been terrible, horrific. And so Canada has a lot of work to do as well to repair the damage it's inflicted on our people and our communities.
Phil Fontaine, it was, as you say, a historic day, and we really do appreciate you taking some time out of your day to talk to us about what it was like. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Catherine.
After many years of waiting, Indigenous people have finally heard, "I'm sorry," from the head of the Catholic Church. Pope Francis apologized for the abuse suffered in Canada's residential school system. Here's what Governor General Mary Simon had to say about that apology.
Waking up to an apology was pretty incredible. We've been working at this for so long and we've always believed that it would happen. But to hear it actually happening was very emotional, and just listening to the people that were in Rome and how they responded was really important for me, because it's true that the apology is very significant, but there has to be action behind it. So I think that work is still very much ahead of us.
Marie Wilson is a former commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We'd also like to disclose that she is currently a board member of CBC Radio Canada. We've reached her today in Yellowknife. Thank you very much for your time today.
Yes, good to be here.
Now, 2015 that you put out the calls to action with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Obviously, this call for an apology was one of them, but the demands for an apology, as you know well, long predate that. What was it like finally hearing an apology from the Pope today?
Well, I think it's a seize the moment kind of day. It's a great day, and there's nothing to be taken away from that. And it is absolutely important how the people on the ground received that and how it touched them, especially the elderly survivors, because we know that since we issued our calls in 2015, so many residential school survivors have passed on, and they never got to hear these words, which was one of the reasons why at the time we asked for it to be done within a year. So it's long overdue, and it's welcome for today as far as it goes, but there's a lot to be done from here on.
Well, I want to pick up on that idea of as far as it goes, because of course that can mean and does mean, I think, many things in this context. When you made the call to action through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, you talked about the Pope apologizing for the role of the Catholic Church. When the Pope actually apologized today, he said, "I feel sorrow and shame for the role that a number of Catholics, particularly those with educational responsibilities, have had in these things that wounded you." He put the responsibility on specific Catholics rather than more broadly apologizing for the role of the church. Is that a meaningful distinction to you? Does that matter? Did he live up to what you had hoped to hear?
No, I think it's scratching the surface of what I would hope to hear, and what I would hope to hear is based on what so many have told us they want to hear. I think we have to have context to know that part of the reason, not only is it long overdue from what the TRC called for, the reason we singled out the Catholic Church specifically for an apology is not because other churches were not involved and didn't have things to be sorry for as well. It's that they had already apologized decades before, well before the TRC was ever established. So not only is the Catholic Church slow in responding to what the TRC called for based on what 7,000 people who spoke to us asked, but it's also very slow compared to the other churches who ran the schools. And the fact that it is, in the Holy Father's words, some members of the Catholic Church, they weren't just members, they were leaders. They were leaders, they were fathers and nuns, and who were in charge of children, and who had a boss. And the boss was the Pope of the day, because the church is a worldwide church, and it has the issue of oversight and lack of protection and disregard and even the spiritual abuses that many survivors talk to us about making children feel small and unworthy and dirty and savage-like, and the threats of fear of hell and such that was put on their parents for traditional spiritual practices. That's a multi-layered range of things, of harms, really, that people told us about in their multiple ways. And so apology, it's extremely important. Many have told us an apology is not going to heal them, that it would contribute to their healing. But there's a lot more that needs to be said. And I really hope, as the Holy Father has committed to coming to Canada, that the time between today and then will be really put towards drilling down into not just the call to action that said, please apologize, but the many other calls to action that call on the church for many other things as well, and that there'll be progress to report on those things.
I definitely want to touch on all of that as well, but I just want to stay on this idea for one moment of the apology not going far enough. And I'd like you to talk about what you think the consequences of that are. And I wonder particularly about, certainly we've heard members of the Catholic Church in Canada since these unmarked graves were revealed, many who have expressed contrition. But there's also been a small group that have said, in one instance, somebody actually saying fake news, really pushing back against this. And I wonder if you think words that don't go far enough, what message it sends to, particularly those people who seem to be unwilling to accept both what your commission found and what we're seeing concrete examples of.
Well, I also do believe that careless words are damaging. And so perhaps the Pope went as far as he could today in this context, knowing that really the heart of it all was get closer to the many, many, many survivors who are not in Rome today, who did not get to be part of that delegation, come to where they are and then speak your full heart at that time. So I don't want to diminish the importance of today. It's a big commitment to say, I'm sorry, and I will come and be there on Canadian soil to speak further. That's hugely important. It is also true that there are many people, and many of them spoke to us, who said they don't care what the Pope or any other church leader says or does. The experience of residential school completely ruptured any tie that they might ever have had with the church. And that is also true. There's no one truth in all of this. But this is important by way of honoring and respecting those who did say that this would be meaningful and helpful to them. And indeed, those who said the church has continued to play an important role in their lives. We need to honor all of that and not just select some survivors' concerns.
Let's talk about what else the church needs to do. What would you point to?
Well, you've already zeroed in on part of it. I think it is the whole body of the church, and that is to really own its leadership role there. I mean, it's important to know that something like 65 to 70% of the residential schools were run by various orders of the Catholic Church. So it's important that the scope of its role over more than 150 years. It's also the longest serving of church communities to have a role with Indigenous children in school setting. So that the enormity of that, I think, needs to be captured. I also think that one of the abuses, and it was touched on a little bit in what the Holy Father said, but the issue of spiritual abuse. We tend to think about residential schools as all about sexual abuse and the kinds of things that people describe to us. Yes, of course, there was that for many, not all, but for many. But there were other kinds of abuses. And the biggest one, if you think about it, was the role the church played. And this is harsh language, but I have to say it, the role the church played in investing in racism. By that, I mean the sense that children, and that's why we called it cultural genocide, that children would be left to think that they are unworthy by their very nature, that they're not good enough, that they're not light enough, that they're not white enough, that they're not smart enough, that they're not capable. We heard so many versions of that kind of negative mantra that many people told us they took that on as being true and real, and it caused great ruptures in their families. The other thing is, I think, this past year, no matter what the TRC said and however hard we worked at it and however well we tried to conclude things, it really was the validation of all the little children in the unmarked graves last summer that really gonged the bell that woke Canada up. And I think there's something important to be said to wider Canadian society. Because the entire Canadian society has been outraged by that, has been shocked by it. To my dismay, they've been surprised by it because it's been said and said and resaid. But nonetheless, it is a wider than just Indigenous people who have been affronted by this. And I think that is huge repair work that needs to be done. And I think it's also very important that we not just hang it on the goodness of this particular Pope. When one is in the top position of any institution, you own all of that, whether you personally were involved in it or not. And so was the person before who refused to, and so would anybody afterwards. So it's really important that this be done in a timely manner, in a fulsome manner, so that people truly can believe that it actually means something. There's work to be done repairing languages that were taken away, to repair a sense of Indigenous identity and spiritual practices that are just as legitimate, and education itself for that matter, because many children were not well educated in those schools and have no credentials to show for it. So there's a lot of repair work that needs to be done as well, and not just for the church to feel better about itself. That's why we have to go much deeper and much wider. And I'm hopeful today in this beautiful moment that it's the beginnings of all that can still unfold. That's what I'm holding to.
I saw that your co-commissioner, Murray Sinclair, had said today that it is a moment for everybody to reflect on their own role in reconciliation. And I think you've given us a lot to think about in terms of that process. Thank you so much for your time today, Murray Wilson.
Great, thank you.
For anyone who needs to reach out, the Indian Residential School crisis line is 1-866-925-4419. That's 1-866-925-4419. It's available 24 hours a day.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.